Boker Or.
My daughter taught me how to say good morning in Hungarian last night, and I was going to come in and say good morning in Hungarian.
Jó reggelt. Jó reggelt.
No, she said something else.
Jó napot.
No, yeah.
Jó napot is like good day.
Right.
Good morning is jó reggelt.
Jó reggelt.
Jó is good. Reggelt.
Regat is
like
morning.
Reggel? Like
regat.
You just put the T there.
Regal is morning, and what's day?
Napot.
Napot, right. Yo Napot.
Jó reggelt.
Riona, right? I tried to remember by Riona.
We don't say good afternoon. We say good day.
Good day. Okay. I was all ready to go, and then I forgot it. Also forgot to set my alarm, which was bizarre. I woke up, but I forgot to set it. I woke up and realized it was quiet. I've been tired.
And to go until late night. I was up for a long time.
A long version.
Yesterday was very long. Today's normal. Yesterday was very long. A lot of Rashi yesterday. But probably the shortest Rambam of the year. One of the shortest Rambam.
You just finished Rambam for
You're reading the 3 chapters, no?
Yeah, very short yesterday.
It's
probably shorter than one. Okay, so in the third parak we've learned about Ruach Shtus. And the last thing we saw, which is just so interesting how the Rebbe switches, he doesn't exactly switch the order, because at no point was he necessarily talking about negative commandments as opposed to positive commandments. He was just talking about transgressing God's will. But usually we relate to that in terms of transgressing a law as opposed to not doing a positive commandment. But the Rebbe said that what's the real issue? The real issue is that if a person doesn't feel the beauty of the mitzvah, so then he's not going to feel the lacking in the opposite thereof, of the aveira or the lack of the mitzvah, which is just so interesting in terms of the focus changes. So right in the middle of page 115. And I'll just start. I mean, the word at the beginning of the page is right in the middle. It's Vahainu Shanasa Bilti Margish Klal. The first word in the line is Vahainu. In between Vahagashmias and Vahilui. Okay, Vahainu Shanasa Bilti Margish Klal. A person can become insensitive by virtue of his involvement in physical reality, so he becomes his over-involvement in physical reality becomes insensitive to godly reality. He doesn't feel the pleasantness, the sweetness, the goodness, and the loftiness, and therefore also he doesn't feel the lowliness of his distance from Elokus. In general, what is this? The Nefesh Bahamis is covering up the Nefesh Elokis, as we said earlier in the Mayanot. The Nefesh Elokis comes into the body, and its job is to elevate, illuminate the Nefesh Bahamis in the goof. But of course, we know that the opposite can happen, that the Nefesh Bahamis can cover up the natural tendencies of the Nefesh Elokis. That doesn't mean it changes the Nefesh Elokis, but the Nefesh Elokis isn't able to express itself. Nefesh Elokis is still what it is.
Nefesh Bahamis has an upper hand because he's there from the start.
It's not so much from the start. They're I mean, he's there from the start. The Nefesh Elokis enters at some point during the completion of the Nefesh Elokis comes in at a bris. The Nefesh Elokis comes in the completion at a bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah. But it's there. The Nefesh Elokis is there. It's not a matter of time. It's a matter of what's more naturally in line with the reality that they experience, right? The mashal we brought was that Eilam Hazeh is a home game for the Nefesh Bahamis, right? When the Nefesh Bahamis gets what he wants, the crowd cheers. when the Nefesh Bahamis gets what he wants, when the Nefesh Elokis gets what it wants, you can hear the skates on the ice. The hockey game. Right? So the Nefesh Bahamis covers up the Nefesh Elokis, which means the Nefesh Elokis can't express itself through the Nefesh Bahamis, which is what it is supposed to do, but it also has to do. Right? The Nefesh Elokis can't do anything unless he gets the Nefesh Bahamis on board, because the Nefesh Bahamis is conscious you and I, and conscious you and I has to make the decision to do whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's drink a cup of coffee or put on tefillin. I mean, whatever it is, we're making a conscious decision, and that conscious decision is the Nefesh Bahamis. Meaning that experience that I have and you have of yourself. Not necessarily in a negative way, just that's our experience. The Nefesh Elokis hu elokus be'etzem mahusay. The Nefesh Elokis is godly in the essence of its being. Meaning it doesn't have to do anything to become godly, it is. Ubefrat, particularly, in terms of talking about this particular person that we're talking about, Hanitzetz Shabei, the spark that is in him, the spark of the Nefesh Elokis that's in that particular person, who Hanitzetz Prati, is the particular spark, Hashayach El Gufei HaPrati, that's relevant to his particular body, because there are 600,000 soul roots up above, and each soul down here is connected to one of those 600,000 soul roots. So in the ultimate source of things. So each soul is a spark or a ray of a larger light above. Shal Yedea, through this spark of godliness, Umargish b'chol inyanim elokim, a person can be sensitive to godly things. Umargish ma'od, and can be very sensitive, b'davar shumanagid elokus, something that's contrary to elokus. And this is the nature of the Nefesh Elokis. Nefesh Elokis is not interested in anything that's not openly, obviously elokus v'hainu. The davar she'ena elokus begilu, something that's not godliness in a revealed way, talking about the Nefesh Elokis. Eina reitzabay, the Nefesh Elokis isn't interested in it. Ubefrat, particularly, b'davar shumanagid elokus, something that's contrary to godliness. Ubareach mizek bareach midavar hamazik. And the Nefesh Elokis will flee from this like someone fleeing from something that's trying to injure it. Uka'adam bareach mimavis, like a person fleeing from death. Why? The barer lo Nefesh Elokis, it's absolutely clear to the Nefesh Elokis, the misa ruchni, spiritual death, rachman al itzlan, who kashiyesum misa gashmis, chas v'shalom. It's worse than physical death. Physical death is a transition from one state to another. For the nefesh, it's not necessarily as a matter of fact, for the nefesh, it's actually a pleasant experience, right? My chavrusa when I was, 19, 20, and then we learned. Actually, he was my roommate then, and then we were chavrusas later. We learned Yeridei together. We learned smicha together. So when he was 19, 20, his father passed away, and the Rebbe wrote the family a letter. And in the letter, the Rebbe wrote that the passing of a loved one is difficult for those left behind, but for the neshama, it's a very pleasant event. Right? The neshama has to go through all sorts of things, Gehenim, etc., etc. Ultimately, how I don't understand how the Rebbe said what he said, because it seems that there seems to be a difficult thing at the beginning, and then it becomes very pleasant. But the Rebbe said for the neshama, it's a pleasant event. Okay. So physical death, the neshama is not afraid of physical death. Even though the neshama wants to stay in Olam Hazeh and do mitzvahs, that's what the neshama wants to do. It realizes that's the most important thing it can do. The kol chu kosei, and all of its longing, the cheftse, desire, ubelukus. What does the neshama want? Belukus wants to connect to the Eibishter, be connected to the Eibishter, remain connected to the Eibishter. And then relative to what the Eibishter wants, what else does the neshama want? Velas is kelim lelukus, to bring about vessels for elukus. In other words, means of expressing elukus. And since the neshama is down here in Olam Hazeh, it wants to do that down here in Olam Hazeh. That's the place to do it. V'kol gasus, and all of the crassness, v'chumrius, and the material nature, v'yeshus, Friedrich Rappi, very descriptive again. Yeshus, the self-centeredness and Matzias in the existence of the Nefesh Bahamis. Haruhu mechase umaster umailim. It covers and hides and conceals. Alahergish, the Nefesh Elokis, of the godly sensitivity of the Nefesh Elokis. That's the job of the Nefesh Bahamis. And the Nefesh Elokis' job is to overcome that and illuminate the Nefesh Bahamis, like we learned in the second chapter. How? That's the beginning of it all. Become appreciative of godliness. Where? In my Nefesh HaBahamis should appreciate godliness. But naturally, the Nefesh HaBahamis is gas, chumri, yesh, and emetzias. That's how the Rebbe describes him or her, depending on whose Nefesh HaBahamis it is. So what does the Nefesh HaBahamis do, and what can it do? Conceal the sensitivity, the godly sensitivity of the Nefesh Elokis. Uber pshita, simply, the Rebbe says, what does this mean? To say it in the simplest terms possible, and in Yiddish, the Rebbe says it, as der Geschmack from Welt, a person's pleasure in worldly things. Olam. The word Welt is a olam, world. What is the source of the word world? Helem, concealment. Right? Is mechasa, is. Mechasa umaster, right? Covers and conceals. Uftem hergesh eloki, the godly sensitivity. We'd like to be able to have our cake and eat it too, but the Rebbeim constantly tell us we can't. That doesn't mean we become ascetics and have nothing to do with Olam Hazeh. That's not the derech of Chassidus b'chalal. But to be very powerfully involved in Olam Hazeh is also not the way of Chassidus at all, because what does it do? It definitely weakens our sensitivity to Elokus. There's only so much emotional and intellectual room. Where are we? We're going to be, how many places can we be in one time? We'd like to have our cake and eat it too. We'd like that, but it doesn't work that way. So it's a chassid. I always heard the story in the Tzemach Tzedek. I've heard people tell the story also in the name of the Rebbe Marash, but whatever. There was a chassid who had a factory making boots. And boots was a good business in Russia. 7-8 months a year with good boots. You're going to sell your good boots. He made boots. So he was in Yechidus by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said to him, I've met people who put their feet in boots, but I've never met anybody who puts his whole head in boots. Right? You got to make a living. Don't put your whole head in it. Just, do it to make it so that you can do what you're here for, right? And that's hard. It's a real challenge. Olam Hazeh is very challenging. There's no doubt about it. And how do we do our best to deal with it? Learn a lot of chassidus, bring a lot, daven, do mitzvahs, drink good cups of coffee that Gabi makes and stuff like that. That's what we do. The coffee keeps you awake. Upshitus, der Geschmack vom Welt. Sounds so much better in Yiddish. It's mechasu master huftem hergish eloki. Shezeu hepech hakavana manus. This is the opposite of the intention of the creation of the world in general and that particular person in particular. Mimasha haitza kavana elyona b'briyas ha'olamus, which was the supernal intention in the creation of the worlds. What was that intention? What is that intention? Now, there's no was in the world of the Eibishter. The nis'ava kadosh baruch hu liyos lo yizbarach dir b'dachtainim, that the Eibishter had a taiva. We've talked about that. After that, this is the language in the Gemara in the Medrash Tanchuma. Medrash Tanchuma Parshas Nosai, Midbar. Ois Tezvav Tezayin. Tezvav. It's not Tezvav, it's Tezayin. It's right there. That the Kadosh Baruch had a taiva for dir b'dachtainim. And what is that taiva? So again, the Rebbe says something. This is not written in the Medrash. This is how the Rebbeim explain it. Al yedei avedus adam beguf nefesh b'hamis. The taiva is that and that it's rather obvious based on the way the world works. But the taiva is that there should be a dir b'tachtainim, but it should come through our aveda. And our aveda is where? In a guf and a nefesh b'hamis. Right? That's where we're supposed to serve God, and that means that's where we can serve God, right? The first thing the Rebbe told us in his base, Mikem, it's dependent on you. You can do it. And to be in this world specifically, to purify it and to rectify it and purify it. But in actuality, what can happen? The opposite can happen. That a person allows the world to conceal the light of truth. And again, the Frierdiker Rebbe in his very descriptive way. For nisave means thick. He thickens. For nisgashem, and he becomes very megusham, very physical, material. He gets thick and material. Kol kach, to such an extent, until it's lacking from him, and it's possible for a person to be completely lacking. But kol chush, in any sort of feeling of the sensitivity, a nikra feeling, binyanim ruchnim, to have any sensitivity whatsoever for spiritual matters. A person can become completely and totally involved in physicality. Not necessarily in a terrible way, not that he's a horrible, terrible person and he's just, drinking beer and burping all day. But his whole focus is on physical reality and, making money and experiencing certain things in Gashmias and learning how to ski and, et cetera, et cetera. Is skiing bad? It's not bad, good exercise, but the person's whole being is in his ski holiday. Well, he's just missing the point in Elam Hazeh. What about a little Ruchnias? Right? A little. Shazeba, where does that come from? Besibus and Nefesh Bamis. Comes from Nefesh Bamis, because Nefesh Bamis would like a person to be there. Now, really, we know, the Rebbe's not talking about it here, but really we know the Nefesh Bamis also wants the person to be an Erlich Yid. Because the Nefesh Bamis is also created by the Eibishter. The Nefesh Bamis is firmer than we are. Because the Nefesh Bamis is doing exactly what he's created to do. You and I probably aren't. Why? Well, because of him. Okay, Beseder. But he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. Eibishter created him to drive us Meshuggah all the time.
Is our little Satan?
Yeah, Satan, Nefesh Bamis, Yitzhara. But I mean, generally, in Chassidus, the word Satan isn't used so much. Right? The Chazal used the word. Right? There's a story of it was the Tzanzara. Big tzaddik. I never understood the story Dafka because he was such a big tzaddik. So then, how did he have a Yitzhara? But anyway, he was thrown into a pit by the local nobleman for doing something. So it's interesting because he explains a line that was quoted by the Rebbe. The Rebbe, the Chazal referred to the Yitzhara as a melech zokein uksil. We saw it in the Mayanot, an old feeble king. So the Tzanzarav asked, he said, I don't understand why they call him an old feeble king. The fact that he's a king, that's for sure. He has a lot of power and he rules over people. I get why he's a king. I get why he's a zokin. He's old and wise. Why do they call him a ksil? He's not an idiot at all. He outsmarts people all the time. Why is he a ksil? She said, then I was once thrown into a pit by the local putters, and it was a horrible place to be. And when I was down there, I realized that my Yitzhara had come down with me. And then I realized he's stuck an idiot. He didn't have to. He could have stayed up there. Why did he come down here? Because he's stuck an idiot. but where is he? Everywhere. Rav Levi Yitzchak, when he was just newly married, was by his shver, his father-in-law. He was asked in the shul to open up the aron, so he went to open up the aron. He grabbed the parochus, and he went to move it, and he didn't move. He went and sat down. And he came back. This is in the front of shul. This is causing a stir here. The new son-in-law of so and so, and the father-in-law was not a chassid. So. Then he got up and he went back and forth, and he's causing a big shturim. And the father-in-law is just really freaking out. I can't stand what are you doing? You're embarrassing me. So finally, they hear Rav Levi in front. Okay, if you're so frum, so you do it. And then he sits down and didn't open the aron. So his father said, "What are you doing? What was that all about?" He said, "Well, I went up to open the aron and I realized that my Yitzhara was right here with me." So I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm always here. But I'm doing a mitzvah." Well, you don't think I'm there when you're doing a mitzvah? I'm always there. So they had this back and forth as he kept going by until finally he said, okay, you're so from, you open it. He sat down. That was his story. How exactly that all happens, I don't know. But that was Rav Levi Yitzchak's story.
So what's the idea then with saying that he's like a, what was the word, like not smart, like he's
like an idiot.
Yeah.
Well, he's not really an idiot, but what does that mean? That means he will do things, he'll get us to do things that are ultimately counterproductive for him too. Right? He'll get us into situations that are bad for us as a whole. Meaning if God forbid a person dies, so then he goes too, right? He'll do things that aren't, from his point of, theoretically, from his point of view, what he should be as subtle as possible.
Survive.
What?
Survive.
Right, and make sure that we're, surviving as well as we can, et cetera, et cetera. Well, no, he takes some people to a place that's mamish mavas, gashmis, which he might be afraid of. The Nefesh Elokis won't be afraid of misa gashmis, Nefesh Bahamis. I mean, you and I are naturally afraid of physical death, right? And yet, the Nefesh Bahamis might take someone to a place where they should end up killing themselves. Not suicide, just kill themselves. Right? And sometimes in subtle ways, and sometimes someone who's obviously very, very involved in drugs, so then they're killing themselves, obviously. Right? What about someone who's morbidly obese? Right? Has this unbelievable tiger for food, and they basically eat themselves to death. Right? They die at 55 because their heart just can't pump a body that big. Right? So you think about who's doing that to him. It's Nefesh Bahamis.
It's like a form of self-destruction.
Yeah. And for the Nefesh Bahamis, it's also self-destruction, right? Because as soon as this guy's over, he's finished.
There's a different type of it. It's not like not serving Hashem, we're doing an avarice.
No. But I mean, we need the idea when might he be, because you're right. Usually we find him quite smart and quite cunning.
Yeah.
Like he's very clever. Like he figures out how to get us to do what he wants to do, even though we might think we're not. I'm so into my Nefesh Elokis, it's my Nefesh Bahamis. Shh, don't say a word. Right? Okay, fine, 100%. He's very clever. Well, that's what the Tzanzer Rav asked. So I guess the nimshal of so the Tzanzer Rav says he came into the pit with me. Okay, what's the nimshal of that? The Nefesh Bahamis can take a person to places that are terrible for the person. And the Nefesh Bahamis is that conscious person, right?
But that's also
It's not like there's this bogeyman inside of us trying to it's conscious you and me. So what can conscious you and me do? Things that you and I would objectively say are really stupid. Right? Oh, okay. I mean, they're counterproductive to me, right? So why am I doing something counterproductive to me? Oh, because I was overcome by a temporary. But why would I do such a thing? Okay, so in that sense, he's an idiot. He should keep me away from things that are counterproductive for me. Now, I'm not talking about Yaakov's right. Meaning, generally, we will talk about it in a spiritual way. No, we're not talking about it in a spiritual way. In terms of my own well-being, my own conscious well-being is that he'll take me to places that are not good for me. Mom is not good for me. Why are you doing that? It's me. I mean, sometimes can't I be my own worst enemy? Which is stupid. Oh, okay. Where's that coming from?
The more you fight to make yourself better, higher, the more it's going to fight to.
That's also true. 100%. Right? So I have to be very, very careful about times like Yud Shvat and Yud
You feel
things
such
like
high
that.
and then you.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So on one hand, there's very, very uplifting for bring-ins, but there can be Shabbos, Mitzi Shabbos. Mitzi Shabbos is a dangerous time every week, right? After the crash of Shabbos. Right? In Yerushalayim, this holy city where there's all these people keeping Shabbos. Not less in the winter just because it's cold, but for 8 months a year. When do you see people out there acting in the stupidest way possible? When do you usually see that? Mitzi Shabbos. It's not that they don't have to go to work the next day. Sunday's a regular day, right? So it's not, it's not the Mitzi Shabbos, well, I don't have to get up Sunday syndrome that you might have in Chutz La'aretz. No. And I, the so-called non-religious person, well, okay, so that's not the measuring stick. The 18-year-old yeshiva people, when are they acting the weirdest on the street? Not Thursday night. Friday morning, they don't have to get up. It's Mitzi Shabbos because of the crash. That's why we're very important to have a malava malka. Sit down, have a malava malka, have a nice warm cup of, heat up some water and have some water. And the Baal Shem Tov said that's a important thing to do, Mitzi Shabbos, for your spiritual health, right? But the malava malka, right? Very important thing. Keep yourself connected to the goodness of Shabbos. The Rebbe, very often the Rebbe Shabbos meal was a malava malka. The Rebbe actually didn't wash Shabbos day very often.
It's important to have a malava for the transition back to the normal week.
Not to crash. Do a mitzvah. Right? Mitzi Shabbos is an easy time to crash. Because there's just been a great elevation, so What's the Nefesh Bahamis want? Oh, don't take that Shabbos too seriously. He's smart. Right? It's like this separate, thing living inside of me. But on some level it is. On the most basic level, it's not though. It's just conscious you and me. Just that person I refer to as I. That's my Nefesh Bahamis. And sometimes he can be very disappointing. Binyanim Aruchlim Shabbat B'Sivas Nefesh Bahamis. Shehu Kavua Umushrash. What's the Nefesh Bahamis all about? Hu Kavua Umushrash Binyanei Eilam. He's stuck in worldly matters. V'zeu kol mahusa v'inyanou, and that's his whole being. Natural. He can be educated out of it. We know that. But naturally, he's just interested in Gashmias, interested in Eilam Hazeh. Ubehem yege v'yachshav v'yadaber. And in these things, he will yehege, contemplate. V'hagisa b'yem v'layla, it says about Torah, right? To contemplate it, think about it every day and night. V'yachshav, he'll think, v'yadaber, and speak. B'chayus behergish, with a lot of vitality and with a lot of feeling. With the groisen Geschmack, with a real Geschmack, right? Halavai that people talk, and sometimes you do hear people talking about this, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Sometimes halavai that see people talk about a Maimer Chassidus or a Taisvus, like they'll talk about the football game they watched. Right? Wow, did you see that game? That was unbelievable. Wow, right? A lot of chayas. They got a real Geschmack from it. Okay, fine. At the end of the world, there's worse things happening in Eilam Hazeh. Okay, but you have the same Geschmack from a Maimer Chassidus, same Geschmack from a Taisvus, same Geschmack from a piece of Gemara. A new halacha I just learned, same Geschmack from seeing another Jew do a mitzvah. Wow, you see that guy? Wow. You hear what that guy did? Amazing. What a guy. As opposed to, wasn't me. Nefesh Bahamis will take you there. Asher hergish zeh, this sensitivity to Gashmis, we're talking about Nefesh Bahamis right now. Ubechlaluse, right, is in general. Ubefrat, and particularly, top of page 116. Inyan hanoya, the pleasantness, Geschmack. Sheyesh le bezeh, that a person has in Gashmistika things, who shelal as a hergish beruchnis, negates his sensitivity in ruchnis. So we have to be careful about Eilam Hazeh. We are not ascetic, and we don't spend our day, denying ourselves all sorts of things in Gashmias. But it's also true that we have to be honest with ourselves and make sure that it doesn't take us over. Right? So you have we talked about this earlier. There's so much out there in Gashmias now compared to what there might have been 250 years ago, or even 100 years ago. But it's unbelievable. You go to a supermarket and see what's there. Walk up and down the shuk. Look at the fruits and vegetables. So yes, there's a lot. So what am I supposed to do? Not eat? No, you eat. But eat. One of the ideas that I once heard from Rabbi Gafni, he was the Rosh Yeshiva in Kfar Chabad for years and years, and for the Balei Tshuva in Kfar Chabad. So Rabbi Gafni once said that the iskaf in our generation is to eat healthy food. What are you going to eat? Rav Itcham asked me to eat buckwheat groats all week long. He didn't eat anything else. He just ate buckwheat groats. Buckwheat groats it's a different world. Right? Well, you'd have a piece of chicken on Shabbos. Okay, what did your average person eat during the week? Maybe buckwheat groats and potatoes. So he left out the potatoes. Right? Okay. Eat food. Just eat healthy food, right? And don't get so... Right? That's why yeshivas are useful in that regard. Put the food on your plate, eat it, and be done, and get back to normal life. Right? You don't have to cook it. You don't have to clean up after it. It's very useful. You might not like this one as opposed to that one. Okay, but say it's just eat it and be done, right? And stay away from the chocolate pudding. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have a chocolate pudding now and then, but don't make chocolate. You see some guys take 2 or 3 chocolate puddings and they're like, "What are you, crazy? Like, what are you doing?" I mean, that's just excessive, right? So that guy should take 1. His coffee is to take 1. And then decide, okay, no, only Mondays and Thursdays. I'll have chocolate pudding Monday and Thursdays. I'll have chocolate pudding. Now, if all week long he thinks about the chocolate pudding he's going to have on Monday and Thursday, eat 3 a day and get it done and
Exactly.
because if you're so stuck in chocolate pudding that all you can think about is chocolate pudding when you're not eating chocolate pudding, so it's destroying your life. So just eat your chocolate pudding and get on with it. Like forget about it. Okay, because it's not a debate, right? Okay, but it's also true that I don't have to spend my whole life talking about chocolate pudding or worrying about chocolate pudding or dreaming about chocolate pudding. I heard someone once, and I've used it many times, I've repeated it because it was such a great line describing our generation that we are drowning in a sea of whipped cream. That's us. Yeah, there's just so much gashmis, it's beyond belief. Okay, so we have to figure out how to deal with it, not by denying ourselves all of it. That's ridiculous. It's clearly not the avoid of this generation, right? But what? Use it in such a way that we have control of it as opposed to it having control of us, right? Because if we let it control us, that's all the Nebuch Shabbat said. It's going to keep us from serving God better. It's just it is. We know that. We'd like to say it won't, but it does. Okay, so to figure out a way to make sure that we're in control, and that means yes, there's going to have to be a certain level of iskafia, right? Again, not starving ourselves, but. There was I once heard from Rabbi Mas. Rabbi Mas used to be sort of the educational director here, like Rabbi Levinger is now. So Rabbi Mas learned as a bacher in Migdal Emek. Migdal Emek, there's a yeshiva, good yeshiva, and the 2 Rosh yeshivas both grew up together in Brunois. One, his father was the Rosh Yeshiva in Brunois. The other is Mashpia. His father was the Mashpia in Brunois. Now the Rosh Yeshiva's son is the Rosh Yeshiva in Migdal, and the Mashpia's son is the Mashpia in Migdal. So they verbring together a lot, and they once had an open discussion in verbringen about iskafia in our generation. In those days, Migdal used to give evidently like 4 or 5 different salads every morning. They had the good gashmis, right?
Nice building or
what?
Which building?
Was the new building built? I'm not sure. It might have been the first. I mean, not the new one. This is 20 years ago, but there was a nice building by then. And they had a disagreement. Let's say there's 5 salads. Do you take 4? That's your iskafia. Don't take all 5. Take 4. Or do you take a little less of each one? That's what they discussed in the Verbringen one night. But they discussed it within the context of our generation and what iskafia is and what it isn't. It's not having any salad and just taking bread and dipping it in ashes and that's just not what's going on. And look around in Eilam Hazeh. That's not the Eilam Hazeh we live in. Right? That's not how. It's interesting. The Rebbe as a private person, early on in the Rebbe's life, the Rebbe when he was becoming who he is, like on his way. So he fasted a lot, right? Even though our derech is not to fast, the Rebbe fasted a lot. Ad Kedei Kach that the Rebbetzin was upset that he was fasting so much, and there was she was trying to, because she said, my job is to make sure that you take care of yourself. You take care of yourself. Right? When he was much younger, when they first got married, in his 20s, right? Wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating. Right? Okay. But Rebbe never, ever, ever told us to do that, right? Ever.
Well, a lot of things Rebbe did that he did on his own. A lot of things that Rebbe did on his own that he didn't encourage.
Most things hidden from us,
Yeah.
what was really going on. Yeah, 100%. But, we all knew the Rebbe didn't sleep. That we all knew. Right? The Rebbe had the heart attack in 1977, Tavshin Lamed Ches. So the doctors asked the Rebbe to please promise Bli Neder that he would sleep 2 hours a night. So the Rebbe said, okay. What was he doing before that? That's what he said. He said, okay, he'll sleep 2 hours a night. So evidently the Rebbe did. The Rebbe sleep 2 hours a night. Right? Rav Chaim Utzanz, the same Rav Chaim Utzanz went into the dungeon. It's a very holy Jew, the Tzanzer Rav. So he slept about 2 hours a night. And the Hasidim asked him, how can he sleep only 2 hours a night? And he said a line that's a really amazing line if you think about what sleep is. He said, some people eat fast, I sleep fast. What's sleep? You say it every day. What do you do when you sleep? You're sending your neshama back up to its source in Elokus. You're plugging it in, right? Which is like, the Tesla, right? You're plugging it in, and it's coming back down into Elamaza energized. Is it reasonable that someone who's very, very, very holy and therefore very, very powerfully in tune with their neshama could do that more quickly than you and I? That makes sense. He's living neshama. He's not living goof. You and I are living goof with a neshama in us, right? He's living neshama that's walking around in a goof. That's what it's all about. Okay, so is it theoretical, just simply in our limited understanding of things, is it reasonable to see him somehow, okay, let's go, quick, he does the supercharge, right? Now they have the faster chargers for the electric cars. He's always been there. He came back down, ready to go. Where are we holding? Let's try to finish the chapter. Because chapter Daled, what I think we're going to do, and I think you guys can do this. We've done this before in the past, and you guys are in a place where you can, and hopefully you will. And if there's people who will find it more difficult, so I'll ask those people who find it easier to sit with those people who find it more difficult, that at least one day a week, instead of having shiur, we'll do review in Zal, where you're sitting and learning the Maimer yourself. Seder? Yeah. One day a week. We'll start with one. We'll see, but one. Right? Okay. Because, ultimately, I'd like to get you to the point where you can move, the idea of sitting here is to get out of here and move up to a higher level, but we have to be ready for that. And also, we've created a problem in this yeshiva that, the difference between levels is bigger than it has to be, or that it should be, both in Niglan and Chassidus. Okay, so let's start this page 116. Befrat, particularly, what gets in the way? Inyan anoyim, his pleasantness, his pleasure, their yishmak sheyesh lebezeh, in physical things, who shalal is hergish aruchni. It negates, shalal is to negate, his spiritual sensitivity. Ve'ikar hu, where does it all come from? Hakridus the nefesh habahamis. What's kridus? Coldness. The nefesh habahamis is cold. To what? Elokus. It's anything but cold to Gashmias. It's passionate and warm, but relative to Elokus, it can be cold. But it can be warmed up. And when you get the Nefesh Habahamis into Elokus, so then it's very, very passionate about Elokus, because it happens to be very passionate. The Ikar of the Nefesh Habahamis is emotion. The Ikar of the Nefesh Elokis is intellect. It doesn't mean that Nefesh Elokis doesn't have intellect. It does, but it tends to be cool, calm, and collected. Like intellect. The Nefesh Habahamis has intellect, but its essence its most essential expression is emotion, passionate. Okay, so it can be passionate for a hamburger, or it can be passionate for Elokus. Naturally, it's going to be into the burger. The etzem kaltkeit, the essential coldness, shaloi. In what? In yonim ruchnim, spiritual things. Why? Because he's a behemoth. He's an animal. That's a muhusay. What does that mean? The shmoy mechiach alav. His name teaches what he's all about. Nefesh bahami, an animal soul. Kol chayus, and the Rebbe is going to discuss that, and it's very, very interesting. It's not that he wants to just sit and we'll see a much more sophisticated understanding of what's the animalistic nature of the Nefesh Habahamis. Yes, of course, yes, drinking the beer and burping, that too, but something much deeper than that. Kol chayusei v'hargashosei, all of his chayus, his vitality, hargasha, his sensitivity, his feelings, hurag binyanim bahamim, are in animalistic things. Again, this is naturally, without the education that we talked about in the second chapter. Ukamei shana royim, like we see b'muchash. Now, the Rebbe loves the person he's about to describe, but he doesn't hold back in describing him. He's not pulling any punches. Shana royim b'muchash, yesh anashim, there are people, ke'elu, like these, asher levad, that in addition to zois, this, shem reikim michochma, that they're empty of wisdom, Torah, umidas yisharis, Torah and proper emotional traits. Hine maseim k'maisa behema mamish. Their deeds are like a behema. Now, how? What's the Rebbe say? It's so fascinating what that maisa behema is. Again, it's not simply getting into gashmias and being someone who is busy guzzling things. No, much more sophisticated. Much worse. What's the behema? Shedorsim umaligim. They trample and scorn. Rachmana litzlan. Mi'inyanim aruchnim. Spiritual matters, asher ein lehem shum musag klal, about which they have absolutely no comprehension at all. V'harehem kebehema. Why is that like a behema? What does a behema do? Hahoileches v'doreses. A behema walks and tramples. Mibli havchein klal, without any distinction. Havchein is distinction. Klal. Imhu afar ve'etz, if what he's walking on is dirt and trees, or guf adam, or it's a person. The behemoth will just walk. If the person's in the way, the behemoth will trample the person. Why is that? It's a lack of sensitivity that the behemoth has. Why does the behemoth have no sensitivity? The behemoth ain't no das. He doesn't have das. He's a cow. He's just an ox. So he doesn't have the ability to distinguish between this and this. So just walk over whatever he's walking. It happens to be a person. So the person is now ois person. It's like he used to be alive. Okay. So the Rebbe just said an amazing thing. What's the most powerful expression of the Nefesh Abahamis? And unfortunately, you see it all the time. People couldn't tell you where a Rashi is on the page of Gemara, right? Couldn't name the 5 Chamishe Humshe Torah, and they'll tell you their theory on whether the Torah is divine or not. They'll tell you all about it. They'll have a whole theory about the Torah. Who are you? You haven't got a clue about anything. Are you a terrible, horrible person we should throw off a building? No, you're just an ignoramus. So why are you discussing something that you know absolutely nothing about? Why don't you let's all discuss our latest theories in what do you think about the new cutting edge theory in nuclear physics? Well, I don't really have an opinion about that. Well, I really don't know very much about nuclear physics. I'm sure there have been students here who do know something about nuclear physics, but I'm certainly not one of them. Okay, so I'm not really going to have a theory, a position on that, right? It's sort of beyond me. Right? Okay, but it's always, there's 2 things for whatever reason that everybody decides they know more than the people who studied it seriously. Everybody knows more about Torah than rabbis. And everybody knows more about medicine than doctors, right? Doctors also get this all the time, right? That, it's my body, I know. Right? Though more often people say it's my soul, I know.
The more you know, the more you realize that you don't know.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that'll probably, I would imagine that's in most subjects. Certainly someone studying physics will say, look, the really good physicists realize we don't know anything, but this is what we know, right? We have no clue why, but this is how. This is what it's doing. The people who are into quantum. So it's all, I mean, if you ever read anything about it, you can sort of get through the first 30 pages before it starts getting too difficult to understand. They always say, we know this is what it does. It's been 50 years in laboratories that this theory has been shown to be true. It does behave this way, but we have absolutely no clue whatsoever why. We cannot predict what it's going to do. We can predict that, this, and this will happen, but which of these 3? No clue. Right? My wife puts these books in the bathroom so that I'll be, so that there's a book written by a Jew, Thomas Feynman, I think his name is. Really interesting. I think he passed away. Really fascinating guy. So he tells about an experiment. They created something called a photocopier. A photocopier, they can shoot 1 photon at a time.
Depending if
They can shoot a photon at a time now. And they can see so now where's that photon going and how's it behaving? So you say, well, no, it's going straight line. Oh no, but what if you put something in the way? Put a piece of glass in the way. Okay, so now when you look out a window, there's a slight reflection of you, but you also see what's outside, right? What's the dynamic of that in physics? That means some of the light that's hitting your eyes is reflecting off the window back to you. some of the light is going through the window from the other side, so to speak, through the window. Now, when they do this in a laboratory and they shoot one photon at a time and they bounce it around and it makes a little click sound when it hits what's called the photocopier, this thing that can detect one photon. So they put two of them with these, they'll put some glass, shoot a photon, they'll put a photocopier here and a photocopier here. 4 out of 100, depending on the thickness of the glass, 4 out of 100 will click this photocopier. 96 out of 100 will click this photocopier. How does the photon know that I'm one of the 4 that's supposed to go here, or I'm one of the 96 that's supposed to go here? How in the world does that happen? The photon decides? Of course not. It's just a photon, right? It's just a little piece of light. But that will happen consistently. So he says that he brought that as an example. We understand what's going to happen, and we can predict what's going to happen. And if we put different layers of glass, obviously the computing becomes much more difficult. But 96% will go through, and then 4% of those will bounce back. 96% of those will go through the bounce back and hit up here, and 4 will bounce back once more. Why? No clue.
They have another one when they do two.
Two.
And when they observe, then it's act normally, and when they doesn't observe, then it's showing up.
That's really interesting. No, it's fast. That's also in there. That's fascinating, right? They give the photon the choice of going through one of two holes,
right.
And it acts differently when they're watching it. Which is, that's one of the most amazing and important things to appreciate about science, that by definition, if I'm watching the event, it's not necessarily by definition. I mean, that shows that it is, but even before, they conceptually appreciated the fact that by virtue of the fact that I'm watching the event, that means I'm adding energy to the event by virtue of the light that I need to watch the event. Who says that event happens the same way when I'm not watching it, because I'm not adding that little bit of energy of the light that I need to watch it. In other words, everything is a theory. You're not proving anything. All you're doing is watching events happen and assuming that when you're not watching, they're happening the same way. But you have imposed the energy on that reality by virtue of you watching it, right?
We're saying in person or through a television?
The person watching that happen in the laboratory, right, is imposing energy on that field that it's happening in, and the good scientist appreciates that. Says, well, can I assume this is acting exactly the same way when I'm not watching it? Because that energy that I have imposed on that situation is not there now. Minimal energy, but still energy.
Could you apply this? I always think about this, going to, being like the bad luck person who goes to a sports game. Yeah. Are we applying that to that as well? Saying it would be the same outcome of the game, whether I was there or not? Is it kind of severe?
Well, I don't know. There's no question. I don't know. I've always it's something that I grew up watching sports like every other kid in North America, right? So something that I always have found quite astounding, and it's the opposite, but it's just the reverse of the same. That quarterback who has to take his team down the field to tie the game or win the game with 2 minutes to go. And he's got 80,000 people screaming against his success, right? That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of negative energy that he's dealing with. Now we know that negative energy or positive energy makes a difference because the home team wins a lot more than the away team, right? So all that energy somehow does make a difference to those guys on the field. There's no question about that. However that works, I don't know. So you're one of 80,000, but yes, if there was no one there, it would be a different outcome. That's for sure. Okay, because they feed on the energy of you cheering. The first thing the away team always says is, we got to get the crowd out of the game. We got to make them quiet. Let's score first. It'll be quiet. Then, okay. But I've always really been impressed. What can I say? That guy, the good ones, are able to block out 80,000 people screaming for his failure and somehow do that which he knows he has the ability to do. He's confident in his own ability, and he goes and he leads. He's the quarterback, right? They all say this, right, in the huddle, that we know he'll take us to where we have to go. They all say that about the good ones, right? They always say that. We trust him. This is one guy. Now there's another 10 guys who are helping him out, but he somehow has the focus to say, I know I can do this, and it's going to happen. And the good guys make it happen. And that's astounding. Put that into something real. Okay, a football game doesn't matter. Put it into something real in real life. Right? Accomplish that which you have to accomplish, even though there's all this negative energy against you, which is sort of Eilam Hazeh making all this noise, 80,000 people screaming against you doing this mitzvah, but they're not people. It's just Eilam Hazeh. Right? It's 80,000 advertisements and taivas and all this stuff happening that's Eilam Hazeh, right? There's just so much noise out there. Eilam Hazeh is like nonstop. Especially our Eilam Hazeh with these things. I mean, it's just nonstop.
You use it for your own advantage.
Huh? Oh, okay, true. But to have that focus to say, I know what I'm supposed to do. I know I can do it, and it's going to happen. That's very impressive. Those guys are impressive, right? Okay, so we can be the same. In obviously a slightly different context, we can be the same. Right? But the noise. The problem with us is the noise is not coming from the outside; it's coming from the inside. Because our Nefesh B'Ham is making the noise. Right? We have to somehow get that Nefesh B'Ham to be part of the or instead of darken the day. Yeah, let's finish the paragraph fast. We have 3 minutes. I didn't go to mikveh yet because I woke up a little late with no alarm. I caught the bus, but I have to use the Mayanot mikveh, which is
How couldn't?
it's a pleasure. It's so much nice. It's so much nicer than the mikveh I go to every day. It's just it's a pain to schlep the stuff back and forth. So, okay, come, let's go. How you behema mamish? What's the behema? The behema is trampling all over something that he knows nothing about. It's such a fascinating way. And it's not talking about guzzling beer. This is much worse. Right? Conversations that I'm sure you've had with different people about your observance of Torah. Right? My brother and I had a cousin who said the greatest tragedy in his life was two people who were nice, normal, intelligent young boys, and they became such morons. They became rabbis.
They became what?
Rabbis. A cousin of ours. The guy couldn't find a Rashi if you paid him. You don't have to pay him. He's got a lot of money. So he couldn't. He's a wonderful person. So chaval. Clueless. But like a behemoth. Right? Trampling over something. Just have a little, why not just say, look, there must be something in it because it sort of kept our people alive for the last 3,000 years. I don't know what it is, but there must be something there. But it's not for me. Okay, fine, I get it. No problem. No, it's terrible, is it? You ever look at it? You ever read it? You know anything about it? Nothing. Sometimes, and this is also the same general people. They're not bad people, they're good people. They just weren't educated. It's our fault. We didn't get to them. And there's people who choose different paths. Mitzvah zu hem mekayim. This mitzvah they're mekayim. But this mitzvah they don't want to do. So they pick this, that, right? Different streams of Judaism, so to speak. Vadoim is similar. But kol zeh, we'll finish this in 2 minutes. Kol zeh hu ba mia azus. Azus is chutzpah. Azus. Vakrirus, and the coldness, the Nefesh Abamis. Nefesh Abamis is a chutzpahdik. Asher zeh hu hasiba. This is the reason, vagorim, and the cause. Masha adam bali de aveda rachman l'slan. Why a person can come to an avera. What an amazing. Here's the Frierdiker Rebbe who doesn't do any averas, and he's explaining to you and I what happens in our head, what happens in our heart, what happens in our life that we might end up doing something that objectively we realize is not where we should be. Shehu ruach shtus, the sitra achra. It's the ruach shtus of the sitra achra, kisui, and the covering up of the Nefesh Abamis. Not that the Nefesh Abamis is covering up, but it's doing the covering. Right? Shahem, they, the Guf, the Nefesh Abamis, the Ruach Shtus, Ma'ilimu Mumastirim, they hide and they conceal Al Arda Emes, the light of truth. Until ultimately what can happen is that the opposite of the supernal intention is revealed. Why? The Kavanah Elyana, the supernal intention, meaning God's intention in the creation of the world, Shenivra Olam, that the world was created bichdei in order to rectify it. Yes, the Yibsha created a world where the possibility of evil exists 100%. That's exactly what he wanted, and he wanted you and I to choose the opposite. Right, so he put us down here to rectify it, and to make the whole world a klila lakus, which we can. Right, we know that. This tree that you're looking at is a klila lakus. This tree is turned into a maimer chassidus. This tree is now something that has to be put in geniza. You've taken a tree and turned it into something holy. Right, 100%. While yedei kisu nefesh habamis, what can happen with the kisu nefesh habamis? Hine uhepech hamamish. What can happen to the same tree? This tree has a cousin. What happened to that cousin? He became the New York Times, Nebuch. Oy vey, Nebuch. Right? Wouldn't wrap a herring in that newspaper, right? Oy, Nebuch. I had a student once, I said, this because it was so funny. He was a really interesting guy, Jewish guy, grew up in Boston. At 13, started, so-called non-religious family. At 13, he wanted to start putting on tefillin because he ran into a rabbi. He was putting on tefillin. He was putting on his room quietly. His mother found out, assered him putting on tefillin. Chas v'shalom, you're going to put on tefillin. What kind of stupid thing you're doing? So he obviously had some sort of spiritual bent, and he ended up a Jesuit priest. He ended up a monk. I had a lot of ruchnias in there, and it had to be expressed. His mother wouldn't let him express it in Judaism when he got older and started to express it. So he ended up. He went to Boston College. He grew up in Boston. He went to the University of Boston College, which is a Jesuit college. And he ended up a monk. And I met him. He was a monk. He was a monk in Washington, D.C. He was a priest in Washington, D.C. He used to do mass for the Kennedys, right? Like he knew the Kennedys. They were his parishioners, right? And fascinating guy. Only had his first name was Mayer. He didn't have an English name. M-A-Y-E-R, but I mean Mayer. And he started getting into his Jewish roots at a later, he was probably 55. Started getting into his Jewish roots later in life. And the church sent him to Israel to study his Jewish roots, which is really interesting. He had no money. They have no money. There's no clothes, nothing. They right? He doesn't live in an apartment and pay rent and buy food. No money. So they paid for him to come here and do this. So and he ended up being my student. It was all he came to us. Sent and Sfas and the Sent and I were friends. Now we're mechutanim. Now we share grandchildren, but in those days we were just friends. And whatever. And he ended up. I was learning with him, and he told me the story as to what really happened. Why did he decide that he had to think about things more? He did something very big in Washington, and he made the front page of the newspaper. Right? Okay, so he was very proud of himself. Made the front page of the newspaper. So he was walking along the street and he saw the front page of the newspaper in a garbage can, but what was on it? Well, someone was training their dog. You train your dog on newspaper, right? Little puppies, they teach them how to make on the newspaper. So what did they make on? Not something serious. What did this little puppy make on? His face on the front page of the newspaper. And he's a sophisticated person, right? Like he looked at this, he goes, whoa. Wow, all my accomplishments. I made the front page of news. Look, some little puppy's making kaki on my face. That's what it's all about. That's where I've come to. And he ended up in Israel, and he came this close, but he couldn't do it. He was 55, 60, had never taken care of himself in his life at all, and he just couldn't make that transition where he was actually going to have to, everything he'd been doing for the last 40 years, he was going to put in a drawer and start again. And he went back. He was so close. He said, I love it. I wouldn't know how to, I can't cook an egg. I wouldn't know what to do. He's an amazing guy. His mother told me, you can't put on tefillin, don't be stupid. When he was 13 years old, he ended up a priest. Is she happy? I don't know. Right? That's the Nefesh Abamis. The keys to the Nefesh Abamis. Sha'olam da, loy die, not only she'ena mizbarer, not only does the world not become rectified, umizdakech, and purified, what might I allow to happen? Chas v'sholom v'chas v'sholom? Oid mayli mumaster alar emes. I might be involved in bringing about even more darkness. V'zer ruach shtus shemachas elements. Where does that come from? It comes from our ruach shtus. Ruach shtus of Nefesh Abamis that might get me to be involved in activities completely and totally antithetical to the whole purpose of my existence. And even I know that. And I still might go there. Okay. Sunday, the Rebbe is going to make us feel a lot better. Because he's going to, after taking our kishkas out in Ois Gimel, he's going to explain to us, when we said that an Aveira distances us from the Eibishter, but we know a Jew is always connected to the Eibishter. Even the Jew who's a Jesuit priest, his whole life is connected to the Eibishter. So how does that work? What level of the neshama is always connected, and what level of the neshama can be disconnected? Okay, but ultimately we're always connected. Okay. Have an amazing Shabbos. He's something else, the Friedrich Rebbe, no?